we'll get started in just a minute. So you still have just a second to grab some water or a cup of tea, and then we'll get going. So hello. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second. Okay. So have you ever felt that you were an emotional eater, or that you are an emotional eater, or have you had a situation where you turned to food even though you weren't hungry? Right? Have you ever done that? No. So hello and thanks for joining me. I'm Deborah Loader. I'm a certified transformational health coach, and I was an emotional eater. Now, I wanted to share my story of emotional eating and the journey that I took to change that. And my hope is to bring awareness to emotional or stress eating and to give you encouragement and show you a path to change. So whether you're joining me live or if you're watching the replay, either one, it's great. So I didn't realize that I had created a habit that started as emotional eating. Now, my background is accounting and finance. And you know, in accounting, everything has to balance, right? Well, I'd be working along and I couldn't get something to balance. And, you know, I couldn't figure it out. And a bit of frustration would kick up. And so what did I start doing? I would get up and I'd walk away from the project. But the problem started when I got up and walked away right to the snack box. And I didn't even realize what I was doing. I wasn't hungry, but I ate anyway. And as time moved on and I continued that, it became a habit. This problem equaled snack, and obstacle equaled snack, and a roadblock equaled eating. I didn't even think of it as emotional eating until I realized I was eating, even though I wasn't hungry, as a response to something external. Now, hunger is internal. It's a message from our bodies that it needs fuel. But you know what eventually happened? I'd come up against a small obstacle, a problem, even like a blank page if I was trying to write something, and my stomach would actually growl like it was really hungry. I had trained my body so well, and it responded accordingly. You know, problem, food. Problem, I must be hungry, so my stomach would growl. I mean, there was nothing wrong with me. I had just created a habit, reaching for food when I couldn't immediately solve a problem. So at the end of this webinar, I'm going to tell you what I did to turn that around. So let's jump right into today's content. So let me share my screen so we can get right into the webinar. Okay. Let me move things around here so I can see the screen. Okay. Perfect. I used a lot of resources to put this together. And as we go through, I'm going to reference some of those, and I will put some of those in the chat, actually. All of these are available to you. If just mention in the chat that you want them, and I'll email you the entire list. And if you have questions as we go through, just put those in the chat and I'll try to get to as many as I can. Well, we're all somewhat familiar with the nagging voice of guilt in our heads that accompanies an excess or indulgent meal. Stress eating can be defined in other words like emotional eating or eating to compensate for or as an alternative to dealing with emotions. 27% of adults admit to turning to food to deal with stress, while 34% of those admit to it being a habit. That was me, right? I was one of those 34%. Now, why do we do it? Now, it's easy to blame external factors, the food, the party, the place, right? All of those things. But the real underlying issue with stress eating lies in the lack of awareness of our own bodies, our own emotions, and our ability to deal with them. The majority of the time, stress eating is done when the body does not need food, right? The messages between the mind and the body get confused, and hunger is not the main thing wanting to be satisfied. Now, Harvard Health has issued a fascinating article which details some of the reasons that stress causes overeating in adult Americans. And I'm going to put that link in the chat. Let me try this. See if I can make this happen. Okay. There we go. All right, now I can't get rid of my chat. Okay. Here. There we go. Perfect. Now, in the short term, stress can actually prevent hunger cues. The hypothalamus in the brain produces hormones which suppress the appetite initially, but if the stress continues, the opposite actually occurs. Now, cortisol is released in higher levels, which increases appetite and causes those experiencing a stressful time to block out any other emotions and sometimes even logical thought. This cues an episode of stress eating. The longer the stress period continues, the more emotional eating a person will do. And this inevitably leads to weight gain, further hormone imbalances, and an increased risk of more serious diseases down the road, like diabetes and cardiovascular problems. And it's a vicious cycle that once entered can be difficult to escape. But fortunately, there are ways to escape periods of stress and emotional eating. The first step, which you're doing today by attending this event, is to acknowledge that it's become an issue. And this is often where many people fall down, as their eating habits may fluctuate from periods of having a non-existent appetite and mild stress to intense stress and emotional eating periods. Now, I've got a link. I'm going to try to put this in the chat again, so we'll see how this works. It's a link on a quiz to assess your eating habits and why you act in certain ways around food. So I'm going to try this one and see if I can do this without completely messing up the screen. Okay, I think I got it this time. All right, I can't see. There we go. Now I can see us. All right, so that is a test, a quiz that you can take. So be curious to find out how that goes for you. Cortisol is associated with the fight or flight reflex that our bodies have in response to external threats or stressors. Now, when we experience periods of extreme hunger or intense stress, this triggers the same response from our cortisol levels. Both of these experiences cause the body to respond in a similar manner, and as such, it's easy to see how the boundaries between one and the other get confused. Now, similarly, we've grown up getting a stable release of neurotransmitters to the positive areas of the brain whenever hunger cravings are satisfied in a balanced way, leading to these increased correlations and associations between food and feelings. Now, recognizing that these thought patterns have formed surrounding the way we view food, we need to start asking ourselves questions like, are we eating purely to feel that rush of contentment or because our bodies actually need it? Now, this introspection is vital if we're to gain any kind of understanding of our eating habits. Now, take time to consider these questions the next time that you feel like overeating. If you're already aware of when you most struggle to control your eating, and if you already know that, I'd love to hear, what triggers you to stress eat. Now, as I told you, with me, it was encountering a problem that I couldn't solve easily. Emotional transparency. This is kind of getting to know your stressors. Now, I know it's not the most comfortable experience to look discomfort head on, but it's the only way to truly make progress against the damaging habits of stress eating. Even just taking the time to be honest with yourself and write down when you feel overwhelmed by thoughts of overeating or when you automatically turn to food for comfort can be a great way to begin. Once you've identified the root causes, you can set to work in minimizing the risks that they will happen to you again. For instance, if you know that you eat when you're lonely, plan to call a friend or write in your journal instead. The more frequently you divert your energy to these alternative outlets for your energy and thoughts, the easier it will be to ignore the cravings to overindulge. Emotional eating can be your body's reaction to feeling deprived in either a physical or mental form. So create new ways to nourish yourself. Stock your refrigerator with delicious, healthy foods. Pack your calendar with exciting things to do, and be disciplined about setting aside time for yourself to relax. Now, I do have an article about different ways to distract yourself from stress eating. So if you're interested in that, just let me know. I'm not going to put all the links in the chat. So if there's something that really resonates with you that you'd like to know more about, let me know. While it's easy to recommend a stress eater to attend a yoga class or to start meditating, it takes a little bit more understanding for these activities to truly have the desired effect. Mindful eating is a term that's been coined by experts to help those who struggle with emotional eating to remain present and aware for the entire duration of a meal. Now, it sounds like a simple task, but consciously taking and savoring bites of food for each and every meal is a difficult concept, even for those who aren't struggling with emotional eating. Mindful eating consists of several easy to follow steps before, during, and after each meal. So before eating, assess your hunger truthfully. Take time to note your level of hunger, before you eat anything. And also note what kinds of foods would most successfully help fuel your body for whatever that you're going to be doing, whatever task that you're facing. During your meal, chew slowly, right? Take breaks and try to taste every little flavor. Now, there's some professionals that recommend taking a break of between 5 and 10 minutes in the middle of your meal. I have never done that. Professionals may recommend that, but I'm not sure how easy that would be. But so if that sounds like that's just too much, even putting down your fork once in a while or putting it down between bites really helps. Helps you to slow down. Now, after your meal, try to view the meal that you've just eaten as fuel to help you achieve whatever tasks, work or activities that you're planning to do. Mindfully assess how you feel physically. Note if the food was too heavy or too light, too much or too little, or if it was just enough. Use this information to move forward, not allowing regrets to surface. If the meal wasn't exactly what you needed, then just use this to help plan in the future. I have an article on that one too, if you're interested in mindful eating. Now, it's not rare to hear those who complain of mental health difficulties mention diet and a difficult relationship with food and stress eating as part of the symptoms that their illness that they experience. Recent studies have shown that an overwhelming amount of our positive hormones and enzymes are actually secreted in the gut. And that means that ensuring digestion is at its optimum level, that should be a priority for those seeking to balance out the hormonal and emotional functioning. For stress eaters, this could be an interesting place to start, considering their habits. So the emotions causing the stress eating might actually initiate with complex hormonal imbalances. And so regulating digestion should become a priority to lower the chances and severity of those imbalances. If the emotions aren't so strong and extreme, chances are the period of stress eating won't be either. Gut bacteria directly affects the brain and the hormone, and it's only in recent years that studies published in Psychology Today have shown just how strong that effect can be. I have the article for that, Psychology Today also. So let's talk about some techniques to fight stress eating, not just stress, the stress eating. The first one is a food diary. Combating your stress eating can be extremely difficult, and one way to face the reality of what you're consuming is to make a commitment to yourself to write down every piece of food that passes your lips, and do that in a food diary. For people used to ignoring eating unhealthy amounts of food in a single sitting, this can be a real eye-opener. So take note of when you eat, what you eat, and how you feel before, during, and after you eat it. And after a few days of this, you might begin to notice some patterns in your eating habits, whether it's positive or negative. It's definitely bound to make you see some sort of consistency or inconsistency in the way that you eat. There's lots of apps that you can use for your phone that you can keep track of your food or your exercise. But I really do encourage keeping a food journal, right? A food diary. And because you can write down more things, not just what you're eating, but how you're feeling. Number 2 in the techniques is food prepping. Now, the frustrating thing about emotional eating is that even good intentions of cooking yourself a healthy meal can sometimes lead to a binge or a period of emotional or unconscious eating. For those who struggle with a little thing called portion control, that would be me. I know many people struggle with portion control. It's a great tip to avoid accidentally overeating that healthy meal that you spent hours preparing is to enlist the help of some trusty Tupperware or Pyrex containers. Planning your meal ahead of time and then preparing some packed meals for when you know you're going to have a busy week at work, that can save you hours of stressing and sweating over cooking, and also it'll save you hours of stressing and digesting that binge of stress eating. Preparing and portioning your food like this at a time when you're not hungry, right? That's what we want to do. Avoid that temptation. And also, I want you to avoid the temptation to eat all of your prepacked meals in one go, right? Like if you're starving for dinner and decide to cook an entire week's worth of lasagna. If you do that when you're hungry, chances are that you're going to eat more than one portion. So this is what it means to mindfully cook, mindfully eat, and mindfully prepare your meals. And I have an article about the benefits that food prepping can have on your food intake, right? And there's also the best ways to plan and purchase and prepare your food. If you have already been measuring and analyzing and attempting to change your eating habits to no avail, then it might be that you're simply not taking everything in your life into account as you attempt to change how you eat. As stress eating is an emotionally charged habit, simply changing what you eat might not get to the bottom of the issue. You may also need to look at external factors such as the company you keep, environmental dimensions, and emotional and hormonal factors. This also includes your physical and mental activity. To successfully reassess your eating patterns, you must reassess every aspect of your lifestyle. And it makes so much sense, and yet it's often overlooked that to have a healthy relationship with food requires you to have a healthy relationship with other aspects of your life as well. Now, livestrong.com is a great website that covers all aspects of achieving a healthy, balanced lifestyle. And there's articles with everything from food and nutrition and mental and physical fitness, and helps you reassess all those areas of your life. A huge portion of eating and food-related disorders come about as a direct result of negative body image and inaccurate perceptions of ourselves. The role that body image plays in beating stress and emotional eating is not immediately obvious. And yet, as we delve deeper and start to understand more about the mind-body connection, we can see how stressors in the physical body directly correlate to stressors in the mind. While overeating inevitably plays havoc on our digestive and internal organs, increasing the risk of contracting the various diseases like diabetes and cardiovascular difficulties, it also places a huge amount of stress in our minds. Now, as we've already talked about, the hormones and enzymes involved in creating the sensation of stress are produced in the brain and can be released to the body in response to external triggers or stressors. And when these triggers occur, our actions respond directly to the particular emotions of sadness, guilt, stress, or self-hate associated with them. And emotional eating becomes a crutch on which we attempt to direct attention away from the uncomfortable thoughts or the stressors. And we talk a little bit about exercise. Now, exercise should never be used to counteract an episode of stress eating, but it can significantly help with reducing the urges to binge and lose control of food. When we exercise, we feel good, we feel stronger, and are full of positive endorphins and that shift of energy around the body instead of leaving them stuck in one place. As with the other lifestyle factors which combine to make a balanced, healthy diet more achievable, exercise should ideally be engaged with in moderation and as a complement to a balanced lifestyle. Instead of using exercise to run off the excess calories from a period of stress eating, for example, try to distract yourself from stress eating in the first place by engaging in some light form of exercise instead. If the urge to stress eat comes upon you at a time when your body is not actually hungry, and you've taken a moment to recognize this, the next step is to engage your mind and body with another activity to distract you from these urges. It's about actively working against the observations you make when you keep your food diary or your food journal, not merely noting them and doing nothing. Feeling safe, strong, and capable comes as a result of regular exercise. And these all happen to be emotions which those who stress eat regularly are lacking. Stress eating can be viewed as a weakness and as a result of being incapable or unsafe in whatever conflicted emotions the person is dealing with at the time. In this way, exercise can prove to be highly beneficial to those hoping to mentally strengthen, right, against the temptation of stress eating. And I do have an article that talks about the best and worst kinds of physical exercise for emotional eaters, if you're interested in that one. We've been conditioned externally by a vast, ever-growing, and ever-hungry giant that has a huge and relentless impact on all of our senses, not just hunger, and that's the media. Many food companies use the media as a way to make us believe that their particular kind of food and lifestyle will make us happy. Up until recent years, there was little to no emphasis placed on understanding the link between our food and our happiness. It just assumed that bright colors and catchy ad campaigns would satisfy our need to fit in and eat to follow the trend. In terms of how this external presentation affects our mental health, however, the media has a direct impact on how we view our eating habits and, more importantly, our bodies. Now think about it. If we're being told that eating a Big Mac or a Happy Meal will quite literally make us happy, then surely we're going to believe it and buy as many and as often as we can. Not only is this mass-produced and processed food unhealthy for our bodies, but it's being presented to us in a way that is mentally unhealthy too. Add to this equation the frequency of the mixed messages coming from every angle, and it's no wonder we lose touch with our senses, forgetting to listen to and satiate our body's natural needs and hunger cues. Well, we know it's more likely we will consume more food if our attention is diverted elsewhere, like TV and social media and the like. It's interesting to consider if it is to blame for emotional eating too. So I came across an article. It's called Social Media Triggering Eating. So if you're interested in that one, let me know. Getting to know your triggers is key if you are ever to overcome or at least manage your emotional eating. There are no specific outlines as to what an individual's triggers can be, as everyone experiences different things. So it can often be hard to gauge when and how a stress eater will be triggered to binge. Now, like for me, I told you it was when I came up against an obstacle or a roadblock or a problem that I couldn't solve. That was my trigger. But because it's hard, I recommend taking time that while you try to gain control of your eating habits, to focus solely on you, no matter how tempting it might be to surround yourself with people all of the time in order to hide your eating issues, or the opposite, complete isolation. The solution to stress eating will not be found in either extreme. It's by becoming comfortable eating when you need to, as much as you need to, and stopping at that. Slowly beginning to trust yourself around food again, trusting your body and the signals that it's giving. And it's really listening for once instead of numbing the pain or other complicated emotions with food. In the end, avoiding stress eating and learning to nourish yourself with balanced, satiating meals is definitely easier said than done. And you may still slip up from time to time because busy schedules and unpredictable meal plans happen. But the important thing is to be aware that slipping up or not being perfect, because you're not going to be perfect all the time, right? That's perfectly natural. No one eats 100% healthy 100% of the time. By providing your body with a balanced, regular, portion-controlled meals, you'll begin to gain control of your eating patterns and, more importantly, to recognize when you have thoughts or emotions that would previously have resulted in a stress eating session. Now, the battle against any food-related issues is not one that can be fought once and never again. Rather, it's a series of decisions made over and over again, meal after meal, hunger cue after hunger cue. Maintaining awareness surrounding your tendencies and habits as you continue to engage with your food is the most mindful way to achieve that balance in your eating habits. And this can be particularly difficult surrounding elements and environments or people in your life that may previously have contributed to the stress eating triggers. So it's vital that you acknowledge these for what they are and make steps to reduce or remove them. Taking the reins in regard to stress eating is doing more than just ensuring your continued physical health. It's taking control of your mental health too. When you start to consider the connection between the thoughts you're having, anxiety and stress and sadness, and how they're affecting your body, discomfort and indigestion and stomach issues, stress eating can seem like a vast and all-encompassing issue. But just as you change your mind one thought at a time, you can change the way you relate to food one bite at a time. Through mindful eating and journaling and food prepping, speaking openly about your issues, and acknowledging triggers for what they are, you can and will see an improvement. Striving for balance and not perfection is some of the best advice I have ever received. And being aware that recovery is not linear is also a humbling realization. Allow yourself to struggle and find it difficult at first. Just be aware that it does get easier. Try to forget all previous periods of stress eating and start fresh, beginning with your next meal. So how do you feel? Now, this topic can be sensitive to people, so I want to check in with how you're feeling about everything that we've talked about so far. Overwhelmed, inspired, ready to tackle this once and for all? I told you in the beginning I would tell you how I changed. So what did I do? First and foremost, I realized what was happening, right? And that took some body awareness and it took some honesty. Second, realizing I had trained myself to have that habit. Third, believing I could train myself to have another habit. And fourth was to create the new habit. So when I face a blank page or a technology issue, of which I have many, many tech issues, I still get up and walk away, but I walk away to something else. I mean, it could be a walk in the neighborhood to clear my head. It could be standing barefoot in the grass and just feeling the warmth on my face, warmth of the sun. It could be giving the dog some hugs and just feeling that unconditional love back. It might be sitting on the floor and getting in some stretches. What it is doesn't really matter. What matters is being aware of my body and what it needs. Now, when I have a tech issue and my body needs a break, I want to honor that. But it doesn't need food. And creating the new habit doesn't happen overnight, but it can happen. We're done, but you're just getting started. I want to thank you for joining me tonight, and please let me know if you have any questions. Also, if this felt like it was overwhelming with too much information, let's schedule a call to go over what would be meaningful for your journey. Or if you felt there was not enough information to help you, let's talk about that. Now, while it might seem like a distant, unachievable goal right now for you to overcome, however, I promise you it's doable. With a little determination and, of course, support, I believe you can change the way you think about food for good. I'm here to support you. So if there's anything I can do to help, please let me know, either in the chat or message me privately. I'll do my best to get to you immediately, if not as soon as I can. So here is my contact information. It's got my website, email, phone, Facebook. You can contact me through any of those. There is no better time than now, and I'm here to support you. So let's schedule a time to talk. There's no cost for conversation, so don't wait. This is for whether you're live on this webinar or if you're watching the replay. Either one, don't wait. Thank you again. And don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here. So thank you. Have a wonderful evening. And until next time, I invite you to live well.